Hello again everyone, this is Mr. Owen. Today we are going to be exploring a workers' village where a lot of artisans and craftsmen are laboring away at quarrying out some stone. As we've seen throughout ancient Egypt, much of the structures and monuments and pyramids all built of large cylinders or columns of stone, and so we're going to be exploring through that process, how they achieve to quarry out such huge pieces of rock with the ancient technology they had at the time. So let's go ahead and begin the tour.
Welcome to Workers and Transport. Whether workers were employed for the pyramid construction or at the quarries, the government supplied food and housing. Workers for the pyramids and royal necropolises were housed in more permanent villages, such as the famous Deir el-Medina. Quarry workers had more temporary lodgings. All skill levels were needed and utilized, from basic work hands to prepare the gypsum, to brickmakers and sand carriers, to skilled stonemasons to shape the blocks.
So you had all sorts of different professions living and working together in these construction sites and quarries and camps. You can see some of them here resting and enjoying a midday meal.
Skilled architects and engineers were employed year-round, while support labor were often farmers who worked on the quarries or construction during the Nile's flood season. The basic laborers were hardworking and versatile. Many may have been farmers who joined the construction during the off-season. Hieroglyphs found in the work villages listed assigned job titles.
So the farmers, while the Nile is flooding and covering all the fields, they need to find something else to do with their time and some other way to continue providing for themselves and their family. So they could come work at one of these sites during the flood season in order to gain some extra income.
Archaeological research shows that no food was stored or prepared on site, but instead workers received abundant rations of bread, beer, and meat. These rations were taken care of by an administration outside the village. Medical treatment was also available for those who were injured.
So you had full medical care and your meals were provided to you if you were a worker in one of these camps. Looks like break time's over, everyone's heading back to work, so I will walk along with them to the next site.
While some quarries were close to the Nile, others were located across the desert and required long expeditions. These expeditions were sanctioned by the state. They involved complex logistics and required many participants. Transporting a block by land meant that workers had to overcome the weight and friction of the load. To solve this, they first dug a track in the ground. This path was sometimes reinforced with rails upon which a sled, used to ferry the blocks, would be pulled.
Which you can see them doing right now, all pulling this giant stone. I want to draw attention to this up here. These are some ancient cranes. Obviously they don't have machinery or electricity, so they're just using pulley type systems and the balancing of the larger stone in the back to offset the weight in order for hauling these large stones for transport.
Whenever possible, blocks were toppled from a higher elevation onto the sled. Workers then poured water onto the clay at the front of the sled, creating a slick surface to more easily move the load. It wasn't until the New Kingdom that animals were used to tow the burden.
So, using domesticated animals to pull it was not until much later, and so you can see them all working together pulling. This guy here with the little pottery there, pouring water to help keep it slick as all these men are dragging it along.
During flood season, the Nile was at its largest and deepest, which allowed the transportation of the heaviest and biggest loads. Quarries close to the river had troughs dug out to deliver the stones to the shoreline. Harbors and wharfs situated at the river's edge allowed the transfer of materials and supplies. Harbor warehouses accommodated additional stocks of stone so that they were available for the winter sailing season.
So they're going to keep moving that stone in and then down the ramp to the boat there. As she said, once again, the flooding season not only allowed the farmers to come help out at the quarries, but also allows the river to be much larger and deeper. So it's easier to get heavier loads onto it if the water's deeper and it's much higher next to the edges of it.
The Uwadi El Jarf papyri detail a limestone load intended for the Khufu pyramid that weighed in at 70 to 80 tons, or 30 blocks. One papyrus is a fragment from a foreman's notes taken while working on the Great Pyramid. It details the transportation of limestone blocks from the Tura quarries to the construction site of the pyramid. The other papyri are shipping logs containing archives of the sailors assigned to sail the Red Sea and the Nile.
So one of the reasons we know so much about ancient Egypt is all the ancient hieroglyphs and papyrus scrolls that were found that detail out how they did things and why they did things and the whole history of their daily life.
Stone cargo generally weighed 15 tons per boat, amounting to roughly 6 or 7 blocks per trip. For heavier loads such as obelisks, monolithic pillars, or gigantic statues, larger boats were used. These transports are the ones typically showcased on temple walls.
Once again, them showcasing how they're doing things by leaving us these carvings and drawings. Let's take a little closer look at this boat here before we end the tour.
River transportation was the most efficient way to ferry stone blocks between the quarry and the construction site. Blocks were transported by flotillas of several types of boats. The most detailed illustration of transport by river is a relief of Queen Hatshepsut's barge with an accompanying flotilla.
And we're going to actually talk about Queen Hatshepsut in our next reading. You can see here, it looks like they also brought some exotic animals with them. Because, as people are today, people in ancient Egypt were fascinated by interesting creatures such as lions, and it looks like they have captured some and brought them here, probably for the pharaoh or some wealthy individual to add to their menagerie. So let's just take a quick overview here. You can see the quarry site and the warehouse where they're loading it onto the ship for transport down the Nile. And if you go further up and back, we can see the actual quarry with multiple cranes and scaffold platforms. Looks like they're going to be cutting out a bunch of stone blocks right there. You can see them all neatly and arranged in kind of a grid pattern there. But this has been the Egyptian worker, quarry, and transport tour. I hope this gives you a bit more information about how they made these great monuments in antiquity. We're going to go ahead and end here today. I hope you guys enjoyed the tour, and until next time.